Webinar is recording and starting, and we should have our attendees joining in now. Give it a few seconds. We have participants, of course.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're in a cool spot. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Chris Corsi. I'm the chairman of the Board of Supervisors here in Sonoma County. Just want to say welcome. And before we get started, a couple of notes. First of all, you'll notice that we have interpreters in this call, both Spanish interpreters and American Sign Language interpreters. So please make an effort to speak clearly and slowly enough so these folks can do their jobs and keep up with us. We're going to start now with a brief message for our Spanish-speaking viewers from Julie.
Thank you. Muy buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a la reunión. Esta reunión será interpretada al español. Si quiere escuchar en español, por favor haga clic en el icono del globo que va a aparecer al pie de la página y escoja el idioma español. Gracias. Any comments made in Spanish will be interpreted to English, and you can hear the interpretation by clicking on the globe icon.
Gracias, Julie. So it's been almost 4 months since the county opened an emergency shelter site at the county government center where I am right now. It's right outside my window. This is a place that 80 individuals currently call home. This is our 6th webinar that we've been hosting to keep neighbors updated on the status of operations at the site and to answer questions that you may have about the site and about the neighborhood. As we've done at previous meetings, today's webinar will be recorded. It'll be posted on the county's Homeless Services Division website for future reference if you want to check back to it or refer others to it later on who couldn't be with us right now. On the website, you'll also find a list of frequently asked questions about the emergency shelter site, in addition to recordings of the previous webinars. Today, I'm joined by Dave Kiff, our Director of Homelessness Services, a division of our Department of Health Services. He'll be providing an update on the site. His boss, Tina Rivera, the Director of the Department of Health Services, will be available to answer questions about services provided at the site. We have Matt Milligan. Is Matt on the call? I didn't see him earlier.
And unfortunately, Matt's out sick, Supervisor Corsi, so he's not with us today.
Okay. We have Michelle Patino from DEMA, which I think is Disaster Emergency Management Associates or
Disaster Emergency Medical Assistance.
Okay, I wasn't even close. Thank you for that.
You are very close, Supervisor Corsi.
DEMA manages the shelter site. So we also have a couple of special guests today from the city of Santa Rosa, and I really appreciate both of them being here. Council member Victoria Fleming, who represents this area on the city council, and Police Chief John Cregan. Victoria, would you like to say hello to our attendees?
Sure, thank you, Chair Corsi, and everybody at the county who set this up, Director Rivera and Mr. Kiff and Michelle for joining, as well as Paul Gullickson and his team and the chief for joining. I just wanted to take an opportunity to let those of you who are listening, most likely constituents in District 4, living north of Steel Lane, know that I do receive your complaints. I am in constant communication with the supervisor, and that we take your concerns and your quality of life really seriously. And it's important to us to balance that with providing for reasonable options for people experiencing homelessness. And my job here, my role here is to listen and mainly take back your concerns to my city manager, as well as collaborate with the Chair Corsi, moving forward. So hopefully we can be solutions oriented and make sure that any concerns that you may have are, if they're not addressed today, that we can make plans to address them. So thank you for your collaboration.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Chief Cregan, you want to say a few words of introduction?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And for everyone, my name is John Cregan. I'm our Chief of Police here in Santa Rosa. And I appreciate being invited to this meeting because this is a learning opportunity for me to hear from our community about what are some of the impacts in the area and how as we as a police department can better address some of those impacts. And in preparation for this meeting, I worked to pull a lot of data from not only calls for service at the encampment site, but the surrounding area, so I can better understand some of the impacts. And I work very closely with Councilmember Fleming for when she received some of the community concerns, and we'll be able to talk about some of those issues. And I'm really proud of the work that the Santa Rosa Police Department and our whole city team has done to address some of the impacts, and working closely with our county partners to be able to hopefully reduce some of those impacts to the neighborhood. And I think we're seeing some exciting progress, but I want to hear more directly from our community tonight of areas of concern that maybe we're missing and how we can address it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for being here, Chief. We also have several members of our Homeless Services Division staff on hand. They're the subject matter experts who will be helping us answer your questions. So before we get started, I'd just like to remind the audience that if you've joined us on Zoom and would like to pose a question for any of us here or make a comment, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you. You're also invited, if you'd rather, to post your question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And finally, you can email questions directly to temporary shelters, all one word, temporary shelters, plural, at sonoma-county.org. That's temporary shelters at sonoma-county.org. All right, we'll be taking questions and comments in just a couple of minutes. First, Dave Kiff, Director of our Homeless Services Division, has a short presentation about the site. Dave?
Thank you, Chair Corsi, and for all of you who are attending on Zoom, we appreciate your being here. I know our team throughout the Department of Health Services with Director Rivera, we all really appreciate the feedback that we get, and our commitment remains to make this site both useful and helpful for the clients who are within it and non-impactful for the neighborhoods adjacent to it, because we know this is a use that that is new and shorter term. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the site, and we have, as Supervisor Corsi mentioned, upwards of 80 people there. That fluctuates. Some people self-exit, some people are exited, other people wonderfully move on to permanent housing, and that's an important goal for everybody to have that kind of care that's been given by Michelle's team at DEMA to work on their housing solutions. And that's part of daily life there at the encampment. We have people that have jobs. We have people that commute to their jobs, they bike to them, or they transit to them, or they use their own cars. We also have people that are working on basic things that help prepare them for housing, like getting their documents ready. Oftentimes your driver's license is lost or your social security card's gone. So there's a lot of Michelle's work goes into that. It goes into housing readiness, helping find housing that's going to have a little bit of supports for their next step. So all of those members are part of Michelle's team. The other things that you see at the encampment, shower truck comes in. It's a brand new one now. It includes laundry services, which is pretty terrific. That helps people stabilize even a little bit more. We have a community garden inside there that the UC Master Gardeners help prepare. So that was terrific. A lot of people on bikes, a lot of people with dogs. So it is, again, up to 80 people living their lives in that facility and hopefully advancing. Some of the things that we try to take good care of with the neighbors is certainly the noise level. Folks hanging out in the creek area, it's not wrong to hang out in the creek area, but folks are supposed to be quiet. They're not supposed to litter. We're supposed to follow our the good neighbor policies that each member of each client within the emergency encampment signs. And we just recently added a weekend patrol because we knew with weather getting warmer, it's kind of nice to be out there in the shade. Perfectly okay to be out there in the shade, but we want people to be respectful of their neighbors. So for the second weekend and then continuing through the summer, we'll have those nighttime patrols on Saturdays and Sundays. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the partnership that we've had with the city of Santa Rosa, from the police department to the city manager's office to the council to your homelessness team. They've just been really super to work with, to the fire department, because this is a lot of people in one small area that's new. So I've really appreciated the partnership we've had with both the city of Santa Rosa and all of its teams. I also appreciate the partnership that we have with DEMA, our site operator. They do some great work. We're happy to have them there. We're happy to have the security presence that they offer. And with that, I'll stop and certainly be interested in hearing questions from folks.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Just want to remind folks who are continuing to join here that this webinar is being recorded and it'll be available on the county's Facebook page and on our YouTube channel in both English and Spanish, so you can share it with others. Now, Paul Gullickson, who's our communications manager, is going to facilitate the Q&A portion here. Let's get that started, Paul.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair Corsi. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. As Chair Corsi mentioned, we are going to give priority to people who want to ask questions in person. So if you have a question you want to ask, just push the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen, and I will call on you. We also have some, if you'd like to pose a question in the Q&A box, please do so, and we will pose those to our panelists. We also have staff and others on hand who can begin answering those questions to start us off. So again, if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. We do have some questions that were submitted in advance, and both Suzanne and James have questions about what numbers, how many residents at the tent shelter site have been moved into permanent housing, what numbers we have about successful transitions. Dave, do you have any numbers on that? Or Michelle?
Unless Michelle can correct me, we have just a handful so far. And remember, these folks are coming out of chronic homelessness. They've been on the trail, the Joe Rodota Trail, almost everyone, for a long time. So there's a lot of stability that needs to go to secure placement. And the other thing I wanted to mention in my beginning, you folks saw probably in the Press Democrat where the county was able to secure a really important grant. It's called an Encampment Resolution Fund grant. And that grant funds permanent supportive housing for people coming off the trail. So, and not only do we're using this time to get people ready, get them housing ready, but thankfully we're able to secure that grant, and now we can improve the pipeline because it's a small pipeline to permanent housing. That's part of the reason we have such a homelessness problem in Sonoma County, is that the permanent housing is really hard to find, especially permanent supportive. So that grant is going to really put that on steroids and allow us to find immediate placements for folks. And you'll see, I think you'll see a lot of progress in the coming couple of months. And Michelle, if you had anyone to add to that, please do.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add to that. We've had 3 successful moves as of right now, and we have 1 more next week that is scheduled to move into their own permanent residence as well.
And I'd just add that, we would love to have higher numbers than that. But as Dave said, almost all of these people have been homeless for quite a while. A lot of them were resistant to services for quite a while. Having them where they are in a safe place, a place where they can have services offered to them every day, available to them every day, that in itself is a huge victory. So, we wish that dozens and dozens had come through here and are now living successfully on their own. It's not the case. It's not the reality of the issues that we're dealing with, but getting them here it is a win for them and for all of us, for our community.
Great, thank you. I'm now going to go to Shirley Cheel, who has her hand raised. Shirley, can you hear us?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good.
Thank you.
First, of course, I want to applaud the partnerships with the city and the county. It's been a long time coming, and I think that's fantastic. I'm wondering how long this encampment is going to continue. I know originally it was 6 months, and my major concern is that these folks, what's going to happen to them when this ends? Because obviously they're going to need this support. They're going to need to be prepared for housing. They're going to need all of this management and help and support that FEMA seems to be offering. And so my concern is when these programs start, there almost can't be an end because these folks are still in need. And that's my major concern. What's next?
Well, I appreciate the question. What's next is permanent housing for some, hopefully many. And then, as you're pointing out, we will not just toss people back on the streets. This is an opportunity, and we've been given that opportunity to take good care of people who have been on the streets a long time. We're not going to return them there. Our goal is we're planning right now for what's next. There is a what's next. We need to have that discussion with the Board of Supervisors, and that's coming up in the next, say, 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. We're now going to go to Justin Milligan. Justin, you have a question for us?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Justin Milligan. I'm a homelessness prevention attorney for Legal Aid. And I just wanted to mention that I would like to reach out to a couple of people, Mr. Kiff and Supervisor Corsi. I think it would be a good idea. I'd just like to talk to you about some way I could have better access to people in these types of safe parking places, because I think I could provide a service possibly. And so I just want to let you know I'm going to reach out to you both. Probably should have done it before. I just realized that this is the way to overcome an obstacle I've had in accessing even clients at safe parking, which I really appreciate. I really appreciate the work you guys have done, and looking forward to reaching out to you.
Okay, Justin, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Justin. I now have a question that I'm gonna direct to Chief Cragen. I know, Chief, you brought some numbers with you to share with us today, and the question is from Suzanne, who asks. She said it would be helpful to have some data from the city of Santa Rosa on police calls related to unhoused incidents, as well as reports on debris in the neighboring areas. I think you have some numbers about that on that front.
Yes, absolutely. And so I pulled first, if we talk about the actual sanctioned encampment itself. So in that encampment, we've had since started on March 22nd, our officers responded 63 times, but a lot of those are low level calls. So I was looking at some of the ones, there's pen disturbance calls. Our in response team has responded 6 times to provide assistance. And then a variety of other calls of just some arguments, some domestic violence incidents and things like that. So it hasn't been an overwhelming amount of calls at the actual facility. Now, when you look in the area, so we pulled the geographical area of going just over a mile and surrounding the encampment, we have seen a small uptick, but it hasn't been actually tremendous in the calls for service in there. Where we've seen a more significant is some of the proactive policing. So our officers have been more proactive in the area, addressing some of the issues. And then we have a citywide crew that we go out once a week and address trash issues in the city. And some of the homeless encampments can be spilling out into the sidewalk or the roadways. And since March, in that geographical area, they removed 20 cubic yards of trash that our city team has gone out there, and they go out with a city crew, and it's really a collaboration of our we have a debris removal team for the city, our downtown enforcement team, and the host team through Catholic Charities. And we go out leading with compassion and trying to offer services to those, but then cleaning up some of the debris in the area. So we've made some substantial progress, but we're continuing to track the data, not only for calls for service actually at the site, but also the surrounding area. We've been looking at Still Lane Park and some of those impacts in those areas, and we're continuing to monitor that. And I'm really excited that our city council has invested in our downtown enforcement team. So actually this is Sunday, we're going to be increasing the size of our downtown enforcement team to 8 officers, and for the first time ever have 7-day-a-week coverage. And so I think that's going to provide a lot of support for our community to be able to address. And I also think it's going to provide more assistance for some of our unsheltered population to be able to get in the services, that we have kind of our subject matter experts on that team to help guide people in the services. And I'm happy if people have more specific questions to dive a little deeper into that data.
Chief, I wonder if you could specify what area that trash and debris came from. I don't want to give the impression that that was all from the shelter site.
Yeah, so yeah, to be very clear, that none of it was actually from the shelter site. So looking at the different ones, like we see Mendocino Ave and Still Lane right there at that Chevron station. So that's a substantial quarter-mile at least. That tends to be, for years, has been an area, well before this encampment, has been an area that collects trash and debris. Mendocino and Elliott, Mendocino and Admin. So that is a little close that we had some there. Still Lane Park. There were 6 cubic yards of trash removed from there. Another site at Mendocino and Elliott, another 4 cubic yards. Still Lane Park again, Lomitas and Mendocino. Those are some of the themes. So it's kind of geographically in a half-mile area of that. And clearly not all of that is directly or related or even indirectly related to the site there. It's just that's been for decades an area that's impacted by some of our unsheltered community members.
Great. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, that's really helpful information. Again, we want to invite our attendees. If you have a question, please just hit the raise your hand button and we'll call on you. I want to extend that invitation to our newspaper reporter friends who have joined us as well. If you have any of our reporter friends, if you've joined us and have a question for our panelists, please feel free to raise your hand. One question we did get in our Q&A box was from James, who's asking, is there additional funding for extension of the shelter site and or are other camps in the works? Dave, you had an answer for that?
Appreciate the question. Yes. So the current duration of the camp did allow for enough funding to plan for and operate part of the next phase of the camp. Knock on wood. It's still uncertain as to the ultimate cost of things. I'm always surprised at how much things cost. But we do, and we are planning, as I noted, for what I'll call phase 2. It's not going to be the same type of housing nor at this location. And again, that's a conversation that Director Rivera and I will have with the Board of Supervisors quite soon.
Okay. We had a question about, there was some concern about traffic into the neighborhood, foot traffic into the neighborhood. And specifically, there was one of our neighbors asked, can a fence be built at the end of Myers Drive bordering Paulin Creek? I'm not sure who might be open to answering that one.
I can answer that, Paul, because I have been researching that. I have had a conversation with the fire department as the city. I am able to do that. It would be a chain link fence panels. I've kind of wanted to see how the weekend patrols would do and whether or not, and I'll certainly be responsive to and reflective to the wishes of the city. If, for instance, Chief Cregan and others and Councilmember Fleming thought that that was a good addition, I'm prepared to do that. It's a fairly easy thing to do. And I did talk to the city about the process to do that. It's an encroachment permit, basically.
I'll jump in there if that's all right. And
Great.
just say, thank you. I had received a couple of requests along those lines as well, and had forwarded them on to our city manager. And it sounds like our team linked up with Dave here about it. And what I'm hearing from constituents is just a concern around people filtering over the creek and damage to the creek, as well as the quality of life in the neighborhood. If you see it as a good idea, I think that what I'm hearing from residents is that there is a desire to have fewer opportunities for filtration across the creek into the North of Steele neighborhood.
I appreciate that. I'll likely go ahead and start processing that permit.
I do appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll touch bases with City Manager Smith, and I see that Assistant City Manager Dunstan is on the panel too, or listening in too. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria asked the question, would you please comment on PSH and what agencies are helping with the process? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what PSH.
I can help there.
Okay.
Sure. So appreciate that question too. PSH means permanent supportive housing. And that,
of course,
that in effect is a person's long-term housing. It could be where they stay the rest of their lives. It could be where they stay for couple of months, couple of years until they further stabilize. And the S is very important. It means supports. That means they get case management and supportive services while they're in their housing itself, or immediately adjacent to it, so they can have all the tools they need to stay in housing. So one of our major partners in the grant that I mentioned is Share Sonoma County. They're gearing up to include more permanent supportive housing in their inventory. And then the grant also authorizes Director Rivera to bring on 2 more positions that are entirely funded by the grant. That is the kind of supportive services staff members that would help provide that. So that's kind of how we're looking at it now. However, as I say that, some of the people that Michelle mentioned that have moved on to PSH have moved on to other places outside of Share Sonoma County. We have folks who move to Petaluma. We have other folks who moved to Santa Rosa. So it's not limiting at all. Any housing opportunity that would meet their needs, we're trying to seek.
And permanent supportive housing is, as Dave mentioned earlier, it's one of the keys to the whole continuum of housing that we need to get someone from being completely unhoused to being independently housed. It's a step along the way, but it's a hugely important step that we are intentionally trying to increase that inventory. It's a big part of our strategic plan throughout the county. And I think part of the question was, who's responsible for this? The county works with cities, it works with service providers. It's called the Continuum of Care. And it's a formal group. We meet once a month, public meetings. You can hear all kinds of information about the tall weeds of homelessness response. But we're always looking for more because there isn't enough. So just leave it there.
Yeah. On that note, we have some other questions. James asks specifically about he wants to know about affordable housing projects in the city and or county. He asks, are there any high density projects being built now? He says this may be beyond your purview, but it's what we desperately need. Dave, I see you're trying to answer that. Type in an answer.
I just untyped it. I'm happy to try and answer. I don't want to answer for Santa Rosa, but we're in my previous hat with the Community Development Commission. There are a lot of great projects. Either some are just opening now as we speak. The Caritas Homes project, which is right next to Highway 101 in the Caritas Village in Santa Rosa. That's 64 beds that are 64 units that are being populated right now. 30 of those are held just for the most chronically homeless with behavioral health care that we at the county team, that Director Rivera's team helps provide the services to. And then you saw that we made some major strides in funding Tierra de los Rosas, which would help build the Roseland Affordable Housing Project. And again, you're seeing things happening throughout the county, including in Santa Rosa, that are coming up out of the ground, not just mentioning, not mentioning even the things that are in planning. As I say that, as Supervisor Corsi said, we always need more, but I think we're making some pretty good progress.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on to that. The city has been working with the county around Tierra de las Rosas, and we approved last night unanimously the extension of the map for Tierra de Rosas, as well as the projects that Dave mentioned. And then we've also got the Bennett Valley Senior Center. And, what we know is that for many people who end up falling into homelessness, it's a continual, progression down from maybe having their own place to sharing a place to couch surfing to living in a car. And so you're right to ask about this density of housing. And, if you look around the city of Santa Rosa, you're going to see, and thanks to a lot of the work from the county as well, not just the city, a lot of cranes in the air, a lot of progress being made, and we know we need to do more, and we are committed to continuing that, both the density as well as the permanent supportive housing. I'll just note that the bottleneck really is not right now around construction, but around services. We have a lot of opportunities to provide services, but it's really the challenge is around funding, because we can't just put people in places without the support, the S and the PSH. So we really need to make sure that we're meeting not just the needs for shelter, but the needs to be successful in shelter. And so that's something that we're all working on, lobbying at the state and federal level, and perhaps a regional housing bond that won't necessarily address that, but there might end up being some provisions if the constitutional amendment is successful to allow for us to generate some funding mechanisms that would then be able to be invested in that support.
Great, thank you. Actually, on that note, Eve asks about other tools, whether they're available. She asks, are housing vouchers available as a tool to help transition from the shelter site or other housing assistance?
So good question again. So both the city of Santa Rosa and the county of Sonoma have the two housing authorities in Sonoma County. And they both have aggressive homeless preference policies. And what that means, so let me back up just a tiny bit. A housing choice voucher or a Section 8 voucher that any eligible person could apply for are way in demand, right? There's a significant shortfall of them both in Santa Rosa and countywide. But so we don't automatically take housing vouchers and give them to homeless individuals. There is a carve out, at least in both systems, called a homeless preference, which says that if you're homeless, you get a little bit of a leg up in getting one of those. So that's how we try and resolve that problem. We would always love more vouchers, and we'd always love more landlords willing to, as they're required by law, accept people with vouchers, because they can be really terrific tenants, and it's a very reliable revenue stream.
Yeah, we continue to promote those opportunities and always looking for landlords willing to accept housing vouchers as a way to loosen up that pipeline. So,
and I'll note that in the city of Santa Rosa, you cannot discriminate in your advertising against Section 8 voucher holders. So if you do see that in an advertisement for housing, please do let our housing department know so we can address that, or code enforcement.
Yeah, good point. Teresa asks, is there increased monitoring of the creeks for trash and encampments, including past Mendocino towards Shenate, due to the shelter bringing more unsheltered individuals to this area? Dave, I know you've been down in that creek. I know Chief Cregan has offered some input. Do you have anything more you want to add?
Chief, you want to go?
I'll just say, when I was pulling the data, like, one of the things that we saw, it was a 251% increase in the proactive police patrols in that region. So they are, and that's one of the things specifically that we're doing is looking for, and we have our team that goes out specifically in the creeks looking for pollutants. We partner with our city's water department and go out and look for some of those issues, make adjustments, immediately clean that up. So I can say, yes, we've seen a proactive, but that's a citywide approach for us. And our creeks and our waterways are critically important to us. And both the water department and our host team and our downtown enforcement team, our debris removal team, kind of all partner together to make that a priority. And this encampment area is no exception to that.
Now, I would just note, if people do see problems in the creeks, what's a good department to call at the city? Victoria or John?
The best thing for us is to download the My Santa Rosa app, and it's available on all phones, and it lets you literally, you can put a picture, you don't even have to put a picture, and then it'll let you send it to the appropriate department. And if not, then our staff will assign it. So you can put whether you see trash, whether you see creeks, whether you see a sign that needs to be replaced, basically any need you have for the city of Santa Rosa, download My Santa Rosa. I use it personally myself in my neighborhood. When I go on walks with my wife, I take pictures of trash or street signs that need to be replaced. And our city works to have a response within 72 hours is our goal, to be able to address those issues. So I would encourage you to use that. And obviously, if it's an emergency, you can call 911. But if just for low level things about some trash or other blight that you see in the community or certainly creeks, then let us know through the My Santa Rosa app.
Good use of an audience that's obviously interested in being part of the community. And so I'll put in a plug for the Sonoma County app, which is Sonoma County Reports, I believe. I'm looking for it on my phone here.
That's right.
Help me out, Paul.
Yeah.
Reports.
We'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, do both of those. Those
yeah.
I've used them too, and people respond even if I do it anonymously.
Yeah, maybe we could the SoCo Connect is a great we could put both of those in the Q&A box. So okay, we have no more, I see no more hands raised, and here's Ludmilla. Do you have a question for us?
Hello, you all. Some of you know me already in varying degrees. The first thing I want to say is thank you to each and every one of you for the work that you do, for the things that you're trying, for the things that are successful. I know that, many of the people here have put in, hundreds, if not thousands of hours to, and an equal amount of effort to make things go right and be mindful about the process that you're doing that. And so thank you. That's the biggest, most important thing I want to say. The next thing it is my feeling and my opinion, that one of the best ways to have fewer, I would say, fewer random people out and about, on the streets around the encampment, but also elsewhere in the city, would be to have some kind of more open process where somebody who is homeless can go over to the camp and basically get signed in on coordinated entry and either get accepted into the camp or be put on a waiting list to go. This is, I'm not fighting for this instantaneously here, because I know that the camp was not initially set up that way, but being able to have some place where people can go would be great. Having people be able to move out of the encampments is wonderful. I mean, I see that, I absolutely see the need from that, from a community standpoint, but there are individual people out there who just scattered about, and to have them have some place to go. I've, personally, like in the last week, I've witnessed 2 medical situations. I stopped, I called it in, got the people some help, and just reducing the amount of hopelessness out there. If people had a I really do think it would be less effortful to round up people, convince them, get them to show up, if there were also a way that people could self-direct, show up at the gate and be given directions on a pathway to that or a similar place where they could go safely and not just be randomly out on the street. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Ludmilla. Any thoughts about that? Anybody want to respond?
I'll respond. I just want to say, Ludmilla, thank you for your feedback. And I also want to say your feedback, as well as the other individuals who participate on the lived experience, in the lived experience group, has really been instrumental, and it's been really vital to us crafting some of the policies and procedures that we use now. So I do want you to know that we're going to take this back to our team. We'll talk about this. I know that our encampment manager, James Alexander, who works in the field and on the ground with respect to who does our encampment work and leads that encampment work, we'll talk about this, talk through it. I appreciate your feedback. We may be reaching out to you about this, so I just wanted to thank you for that feedback, and we'll take it into consideration and see what we can do about how this could work and some next steps on that. But I just wanted to thank you for your feedback.
Thank you, Director Rivera. Let's now go to Alan. Has a question or comment. Alan?
If anybody on the panel knows anything about the Roanoke Park shelter on Rogers Lake Drive, it kind of has been looking pretty disheveled here lately. I was wondering, are they in the process of dismantling it and possibly combining those people with the campus on Administration Drive or anything like that? It looks kind of like pretty much in disrepair.
I think I heard the question, Supervisor. I don't know we can answer for the city of Roanoke Park, but unless Supervisor Corsi knows more. But there is not a plan to take the folks who are at the Roberts Lake encampment and move them to the county's encampment. Roanoke Park has a fairly structured plan to move folks into Labath Landing and then into permanent housing, sometimes directly from the Roberts Lake encampment into permanent housing. But they certainly do communicate with us and communicate with us well, but I can't speak for them.
I was going to say something similar, Dave. There's nobody from Roanoke Park on the call, but they have been shrinking that encampment intentionally. I spoke to one of the council members this week about it. They have been moving some people into Labath Landing and others elsewhere. But Alan, I'm not sure when the last time you went by it was, but it's in much better shape than it was a few months ago, and it's significantly smaller as well. So that's all I got for now on that.
Okay, I'm looking for any other questions or comments. I think we've gone through all of our questions so far. Michael has a question or comment. Michael?
Hi there. I'm wondering if efforts have been made to communicate and advertise this meeting for residents who live in the encampment, and what methods they have besides the filing of grievances once issues have come up regarding issues that they experience in the camp. I've heard a lot of different issues regarding the security guard, about, grievances disappearing. And I've heard a lot of things, and I'm just wondering what options are there, and are there efforts to kind of alert residents about this meeting and ways to participate? I'm also wondering about the the plan for this weekend regarding the over 100-degree temperatures, and I've heard that the tents can get extremely hot. So I'm wondering if any efforts are being made to basically help provide cooling at the encampment.
Dave, I just wanted to jump in and just address the first part of Michael's question, if I may. So as far as the grievance process, Michael, I think you're pretty familiar with that aspect of it. I think you were advocating for one of your clients a couple of weeks ago, and it was successful. And so as far as, responding and doing the work to make sure that clients know that they can come to the county and grieve whatever issues they have, I'm pretty sure that's working out pretty well. And also, I'd like to say, while we're on that topic of the grievance, I think the site management, DEMA, has done just an awesome job at providing the clients with that safe space that they have to be able to come and request any kind of accommodation. So it just seems to me that, and maybe Tina can stop me if I'm saying too much, but it seems to me that we have gone above and beyond to create a safe space in Santa Rosa where people can live safely and sleep safely. And it takes a lot of work. I mean, it seems like we don't hear that enough, how much work goes into having upwards of 80 people to live in close quarters together and try to maintain a sense of livelihood. So, I mean, I don't know if Tina or the Board of Supervisors get enough credit for how they've put this together, but I think it should be more of that. But sorry to be talking a little emotional. Sometimes I get carried away here, but Chairman Corsi, I really appreciate all the work that the board, Tina Rivera and Dave and DEMA is doing for our citizens. Sorry to be so long-winded, Michael.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add on to that too, on top of that, James. Michael, we also do a town hall every Friday that is open to every individual that is residing there at that time to speak and have their voices heard by the administrator, many times myself. I am also present during that time. Case managers are present. Sometimes there are county staff there. We hear their concerns. One of their concerns was they can't go to appointments with their dogs. They can't leave their dogs there. So DEMA purchased kennels that are put in a safe place that are now monitored by our staff so they can go to these appointments and not have to miss them due to those barriers. So that is available to them at town hall. And every time something is brought up, Monica, who's our site administrator, she addresses it immediately.
And to add on to what Michelle's saying too, Michelle's team has been really good working with us on preparing for warm weather, just like we prepare for cold weather. We've got a misting system in there. We've got fans. We've got cool areas and canopies underneath the trees that are there. It is going to be warm, but they're taking great care of everybody and at no small expense. There's a lot of improvements we had to make basically to a parking lot. Remember, it was a parking lot to make it safe and both, cool in the summer and warm in the wintertime. Not an easy task.
And as well as the cooling, we've also taken into the resident animals that are there as well. There are little pools there that are filled with cold water, and they're monitored and maintained to make sure that those are nice and cool so the animals do not overheat as well.
All right, Paul, do we have any other questions or comments?
Chair Corsi, I think that is all. We have addressed all the questions and in our Q&A box by email and that raised hands. I do want to note I did include in the chat the information about the My Santa Rosa app that Chief Cragen mentioned. I also put in there about SoCo Connect and a link to where people can, if they have requests for service, they can just click on that and make a request. So I think that's all of our questions for tonight.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to bring this to an end. I really want to thank our panelists for coming today, particularly Councilmember Fleming, Chief Cragen. Really appreciate the partnership that we have with you and your staffs. Want to make sure we thank our crew of translators, our Spanish interpreter, Julie and Chris. I'm sorry, our Spanish interpreter, Julie, and our ASL interpreters, Chris and Dallas. Finally, just want to remind our audience that all this information and all the other webinars that we've had and the frequently asked questions, all that information is compiled at the Homeless Services Division webpage. So thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.